Right. Welcome everyone, and welcome to the first session of our Summer Prevention Lunch and Learn series. This training is being hosted by the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault, or MCASA for short. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Maddie LaCure. I am MCASA's Prevention and Education Specialist. MCASA is the federally recognized state sexual assault coalition serving Maryland, and we support Maryland's 17 rape crisis centers and many other professionals who work to respond to and prevent sexual assaults. Before we begin, I'm just going to go over a quick few housekeeping notes for Zoom to make sure we're all on the same page. Closed captions have been enabled, so you can access those in their taskbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We also have our ASL interpreters here with us today who will be pinned throughout the presentation. Secondly, if you can just take a moment to make sure your microphone is muted and stay muted, unless you are asking a question of our panelists later on. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. Today's training is also going to be recorded. If you would not like to appear on the recording with your camera on, just take a moment now to make sure your camera is off, but we encourage you to interact with us through the chat as well. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear who is here, where you're joining us from, the kind of work you do, and if you want to share what brought you to today's session. And our session today is going to feature a panel of practitioners who will discuss their approach to preventing sexual violence in schools in Maryland. And after the presentations, we will facilitate Q&A. So if you have any questions during today's training, please put those in the chat and we will do our best to get to those. Towards the end of today's training, we will also be posting an anonymous evaluation into the chat, and we greatly appreciate all feedback as we are constantly striving to improve. If you are seeking a certificate of attendance, you must complete the evaluation form to be able to request a certificate as well. Additionally, we just want to note that MCASA does not permit the use of AI during our training sessions. So we don't allow in AI note takers or AI screen recorders. And if we see any of those, we will just remove that just to respect the content and privacy of our session here today. And finally, before we begin, just want to provide a brief sensitive subject warning that this conversation will be talking prevention, but we'll be talking about sexual violence among young people. So we just want to make sure that you take care of yourself throughout the session. It is being recorded, so if you need to step away and have some self-care, you can always check out the recording later. So we just encourage you to take care of yourselves today. All right, and I am going to turn it over to my colleague Tehan to introduce our panelists and get us started.
Great. Thank you so much, Maddie, and welcome everyone. We are so excited to kick off our Summer Prevention Lunch and Learn series with today's session on prevention in schools. We are joined by 5 amazing panelists leading violence prevention programs in Maryland schools. Our first panelist is Angeles Evans, Director of Community Engagement and Training at Turnaround Inc. Angeles holds a Bachelor of Social Work from Morgan State University. She's a facilitator and trainer with over 15 years of experience in prevention education, specializing in the subject matters of sexual and intimate partner violence, child abuse, and intersectionality. In her current role, her department provides prevention education services to over 4,000 community members on a yearly average. She also has led agency initiatives, including the development of Turnaround's School Response Toolkit, launching a youth-based bias intervention train the trainer program, and alongside her team, continues to expand survivor and community engagement through annual awareness programs like the Purple Poetry Book and Denim Tape. Our second panelist is Dr. Danielle Thomas, who serves as a Victim Services Coordinator at the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, where she supports statewide victim services initiatives and the ongoing development of Maryland's sexual assault and human trafficking response. Danielle began this work as a regional navigator for the Lower Eastern Shore, where she built a multidisciplinary program to serve the rural region. In her current role, Danielle works closely with the regional navigators, state agencies, and community partners to strengthen collaboration, align policy and practice, and support survivor-centered systems of care. Danielle holds a doctorate of education from Liberty University. Her research on the lived experiences of advocates responding to child trafficking in rural communities continues to inform her trauma response evidence-informed approach to systems-level work. We also have Lauren Cooper Executive Director and forensic interviewer at the Worcester County Child Advocacy Center, joining us today. Lauren supports child abuse intervention, prevention, and multidisciplinary response efforts across Worcester County. In her role, Lauren conducts forensic interviews, leads CAC operations, collaborates with law enforcement, child protective services, prosecutors, medical providers, and victim service partners, and provides education to schools and community groups. She has conducted more than 1,000 forensic interviews and has taught forensic interview protocol to multidisciplinary team members to strengthen consistent, child-centered investigative practices. Lauren holds two Master of Science degrees from Wellington University in Criminal Behavior and Leadership and Administration, as well as a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Salisbury University. We also have Alexandra Hochhaus, Youth Prevention Coordinator at Hochhaus. Alexandra is a former Youth Engagement and Prevention Manager from Project Hearts, the youth program of Hochhaus. Currently, she is Hochhaus's Youth Prevention Coordinator. Since 2024, Project Hearts has reached over 4,000 youth in Frederick County through dynamic workshops promoting healthy relationships and sexual violence prevention. They are a trusted partner with the Frederick County Public Schools, Boys and Girls Club, and the Frederick County YMCA, among other local organizations. Alexandra led a team of youth engagement coordinators in the creation and full implementation of the program and recently stepped into a part-time role to focus on completing her Master of Arts in Clinical Mental Health Counseling at Hood College. Her experience includes 13 years in teaching, educational leadership, program development, and youth mentoring. Finally, we have Jenn Metcalf as a Community Engagement and Prevention Director at Hochhaus. She holds a BA in History from Winthrop University and is a credentialed victim advocate through the National Organization of Victim Assistance. In addition to her experience in community outreach, volunteer coordination, and prevention education, she previously worked as a medical accompaniment advocate and hotline staff, offering direct support to victims of trauma. She brings over 2 decades of experience in volunteer planning, public speaking, prevention education, and working with people in crisis. Jenn oversees Hochhaus's community engagement and prevention services, which provides community engagement and training on power-based violence and prevention to Frederick County, including Frederick County Public Schools. She's a member of the Board of Directors for Children of Incarcerated Parents Partnership, and she also serves on the Frederick County Public Schools Family Life Advisory Committee. We will now have our panelists discuss their work.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As introduced a moment ago, my name is Angela Evans, and as noted, I currently serve as the Director of Community Engagement and Training at Turnaround. I want to personally thank you all for your time to join us today. Many thanks to your desire and general curiosity about how we all can be a part of providing sexual violence prevention in schools. I am super excited today, and just so you all know, this is actually my very first time speaking about this initiative in a large public setting. So bear with me and give me feedback. But I'm super excited to introduce you all to Turnaround School Response Toolkit, a guide to consent culture. This is an initiative that reflects our commitment to expanding prevention education and strengthening partnerships with schools as we continue to broaden our prevention education and strengthening partnerships, our prevention and education efforts, and our goal is to equip educators, administrators, and school communities with practical trauma-informed tools to prevent and respond to sexual harassment, sexual violence, and related forms of harm. This toolkit was designed to support safe and inclusive learning environments by promoting consent, healthy relationships, bystander intervention, and identifying a coordinated school-wide response to empower both students as well as staff while advancing Turnaround's mission to educate, advocate for, and empower people impacted by intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking. I just shared a little bit about Turnaround's mission, so I'd love to move on to the next slide. Just before we get into the toolkit, I did want to highlight turnaround services for those who may be joining us across the state. Turnaround does provide services in the areas of Baltimore City, Baltimore County, as well as Howard County. Today, we're going to take a deeper dive into two of our departments, but primarily the department that I oversee, our community engagement and training team. All right, so why a school response toolkit? All right. So the purpose of this toolkit was to make an effort to prevent and eliminate sexual harassment and school-based violence, provide administrators, staff, and students with structured guidance, and to support safe learning environments while mitigating factors that interfere with the learning and child development. I want to pause for a moment and share a little bit about the toolkit's kind of journey to developing into the initiative that it has become. Like for anybody who was working during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were sitting at home and we were getting a number of calls about incidents that were occurring in schools. We were also engaging with different points of media where there were either students walking out because they were displeased with the way a sexual assault incident was handled in their school, or students calling for some type of response from their schools. So we were in a smaller group of leadership here at Turnaround, and I drafted up about 7 points, just general ways that when we got these types of calls, the types of things we can say, the things that we can offer. And then that 7 point kind of response to an email developed into this extensive, almost 100-page toolkit document that I'll be sharing with you all today. Maddie? Thank you. Additionally, a need for a school response toolkit is also in the numbers. So you all may be familiar with this, but nearly in 1 in 3 students reports experiencing sexual harassment at school. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 5 boys report being sexually harassed by peers before high school. 56% of LGBTQ plus students report sexualized verbal harassment in school settings, and digital harassment continues to rise amongst middle school and high school youth. The toolkit has a few components. So we start off by talking about consent education. Then go into talking about bystander intervention, preventive strategies, recognizing signs of abuse, as well as responding to disclosures. We then talk a little bit about school-wide implementation guides and recommendations. And we close out by offering ways to actually partner with Turnaround and implement some of our services into the school setting. So let's break this down and tell you a little bit more about what is encompassed in those different sections of the school response toolkit. So within our consent education, we'll cover things like the 5 pillars of consent. We'll speak about strategies that are very age specific, stemming from ages pre-K to high school. We do talk about digital consent and give some guidance there. Additionally, we have activities for teachers, things like poster creation, role play scenarios, and classroom agreements that they can implement in real time in their classrooms. With bystander intervention, we talk about the 5 Ds of intervention. We provide some classroom and school-based scenarios in addition to building a culture of upstanders, obviously in contrast to someone being a non-bystander, non-active bystander. Within our preventive strategies for schools, we are then talking about building school-wide safety norms. We then highlight some trauma-sensitive practices, teaching boundaries across ages. We then speak a little bit about restorative, and we also provide some direction around performing some supportive school climate surveying. We then talk about recognizing abuse and student warning signs, covering things like physical, behavioral, and developmental indicators of a warning sign of abuse. And we break down some age-specific patterns as well. We then start to close out our toolkit by talking about responding to disclosures, affirming, using tips around affirming trauma-informed responses, mandating reporting guidelines. We speak a little bit about confidentiality and school protocols, safety planning, and family communication. School-wide implementation covers things like coordinated crisis response teams and how to kind of create something like that or get connected to a team as such. We then talk about ongoing training expectations as well as integrating, again, like I named a few moments ago, a climate survey and prevention education, in addition to providing professional development, refreshers, and recommended trainings for faculty and staff of school environments. Some services that we offer through the toolkit, they are highlighted in those two departments that I mentioned. So the community engagement department, and then I'll cover in the next slide our CAPS team. But within the community engagement and training team, the team functions to deliver age appropriate presentations, workshops, and trainings. We provide these workshops for administrators, teachers, staff. Probably very similar to a lot of folks who may have joined some of the work that you all do. Assist in school-wide climate building through trainings and campaigns, like particularly social norms campaigns. We provide support with hosting trainer-trainer programming for peer facilitators, which I'll have a section highlighting what that program has looked like in the past for us. And some of the services that can be included in this part of the toolkit is one-time assessment, one-time assembly programs, grade band curricula building, social norms campaigns, student-led peer educator pipelines, and helping the school kind of develop what that may look like, professional development for all staff, and advisory support for school-wide initiatives. Now, the second part of this is our community advocacy and prevention services team. And although it has prevention in its title, it does provide some interventive services as well. So this team functions as an embedded outreach and access to case management. So the best way to even describe our CAPS team is that they operate as like mobile case managers. They support families who are impacted by abuse. They help folks navigate legal assistance. They would provide referrals to trauma-informed therapy and mental health services. They provide group programming and youth support, in addition to coordinating with schools and staff administrators. Their services can include responding to high-risk students or at-risk students, supporting students post-disclosures of abuse, providing ongoing case management on-site in the building of a school, on school grounds, or strengthening wraparound support systems that complement school-based services. Our CAPS team, they have played out their case management services over the last 4 years or so with the Boys and Girls Club of the Baltimore metropolitan area, in addition to living classrooms located here in Baltimore City. A moment ago, I mentioned that one of the services that we'll offer is providing and hosting and building out a bystander intervention trainer program. So this program, in its overview, this is Turnaround's effort to partner with a local school to cultivate a bystander intervention trainer program amongst students. The program objectives usually involve around implementing a climate survey that we build in partnership with the school, create a curriculum based on the results of that climate survey, deliver educational bystander intervention content. We then teach students public speaking and facilitation skills, in addition to the student facilitators then moving on to present to their peers. And then those same students, maybe in addition to some others that may join in that weren't able to put in the time to be a trainer, will then host a social norms campaign to run for either a semester of an academic school year or the entirety of the year. The schools that we've been able to partner with to implement our trainer program thus far has been the Park School of Baltimore, which is a private school in the Baltimore County, city county line. And also we've done this at a college level as well at Notre Dame of Maryland University. The climate survey often is something that can either deter a school to engage with us or folks just generally have a lot of questions about. So this survey is administered in a confidential way. It usually covers things like collecting demographics and then a student's perspective on how sexual violence, intimate partner violence, discrimination, and hateful language or actions, bystander intervention, and how the perspective that students have on support systems in their actual school communities. The curriculum is foundational, but again, there are parts of it that are tailored specifically to the school where they are from the data that's collected from that survey. This is usually played out in the role plays that we create, the activities that's created for the student facilitators, and all of the scenario work that we do. The the overview of the curriculum here can vary, right? So session one is usually like an introduction, a kind of get to know, kind of piques people interest and kind of the skill sets that they may bring to the space. We then go into working with the students on covering the idea of a active versus a passive bystander. We then talk about those 5 Ds of bystander intervention that I named a little earlier. The next session covers conflict and de-escalation techniques. 5, we get into talking about sets and bystander intervention, how someone's identity may impact the way they show up as a bystander, and unpack that with our student facilitators. We then go on to talk about bystander intervention and how it shows up in the LGBTQ plus community. Here in the middle, you see bystander at park. So we do something very specific to kind of going over that climate survey with our student facilitators and the results of that. We then walk the students into a retreat day where they kind of recap everything that's come before this session. They then go on to kind of brainstorming some interventive measures that could be taken at their school. If you see here, we've highlighted the park school. And then we close out with our students by developing skills, highlighting facilitation, storytelling, as well as the students performing mock presentations of the content that they've learned in pairs. So ways that we then, oh, sorry. Yes. So then just a little bit about some of our program effectiveness. So our train the trainer students learn better from each other. That is something that we've seen consistently in watching the students present to their peers. It is apparent that the students are much more engaged and present when learning from other student facilitators. They show a lot of compassion and collaboration. The student facilitators are often passionate about community safety, about violence prevention, about de-escalation, and they engage with the material and each other in a very meaningful way that reflects the idea that they want to see new norms and a new shaping of their school culture. Our reach at this to date, we have trained, turnaround staff has trained 32 student facilitators, and we've reached 800 plus youth that have been trained by those facilitators or guided, or those trainings have been overseen by a turnaround community educator. Ways that we are offering for schools to partner with turnaround could look like the following. It could look like having annual prevention education programming for all grade levels in schools. It could be hosting a trainer model with student leaders, consultation on school climate survey assessments, family hosting family engagement workshops, pairing with schools around, it's not listed here, but maybe Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, joint events such as Consent Week or Denim Day, which are hosted in Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the month of April. And staff development series, being a part of staff development series, as well as having our CAPS team work as referral pathways for ongoing student support. So ways that schools can gain access to this toolkit, they can engage with consistent, expert-driven prevention education. It can help improve response and capacity for administrators and staff. It can better navigate climate outcomes or be compliant with Title IX compliances or protocols, and enhance overall safety and student well-being as well as trust with students. Future access to the toolkit can look like the following. So digital access is available for a full school response toolkit, the implementation of training. There can be optional add-ons for professional development bundles. There are printable activity modules that folks can engage with that cover consent lessons that can be used in professional development spaces, parent engagement resources, bystander intervention, and school-wide response protocols. Next steps for schools could look like integrating the toolkit into elements that already exist in the school setting. It's showing up in health classes, advisory or homeroom lessons, restorative program that may be being offered at the school, professional development days, and policy updates and support for staff handbooks even. I think we may have gone back. Maddie, if we could go forward. All right. So we are that. Can we go forward, Maddie? So sorry. All right. So some next steps could look like for the students, identifying some priority needs, scheduling a CT planning meeting, establishing a referral pathway with our CAPS team, or integrating the toolkit messages into the school culture. We are at a close to my portion of today's panel. I would like to stay connected with you all, so my information is listed here. I'd like to thank you all again for your time and attention and commitment to supporting students. And your efforts to creating safer school communities. At Turnaround, we do strongly believe that prevention does begin with education, in addition to collaboration and shared commitment to fostering a culture of consent and respect and accountability. Strengthening schools' sexual violence prevention efforts can ensure that every student has the opportunity to learn in a supportive and empowering environment. And with that said, I look forward to hushing up for a moment and listening to my fellow panelists. Thank you all so much.
I can't see slideshows. I can't comment. I can't clap.
All right, and we're on to Danielle and Lauren. The floor is yours.
There, it's Lauren. I don't actually see myself on here. But if you can hear me, I'll go ahead and press on. There we are. All right. Good afternoon. Thanks, everyone, for spending your lunch break with me. Danielle and I are going to talk about a prevention partnership that grew out of a very real problem that we were seeing in the field in Worcester County. The program that we created was not because we wanted another school project or awareness campaign. It was created because what we were seeing was that children were being harmed in a way that was way faster than our traditional prevention systems could even keep up. So when we think about traditional prevention education curricula, it tells us the signs of abuse, how to recognize it, where to report, how to report, right? And that's great. That's important information, but it's not the prevention education that we needed in our community. So we needed to reach students with information that was relevant before something happened, not only after a report had been made. So next slide. So that's Danielle and I. And just so you know, my experience, I'm an executive director of a child advocacy center, but I also do the frontline work. Every once in a while, I conduct forensic interviews. So my experience really is stemming from my experience doing and conducting interviews in both Maryland and Delaware. If we could cut to the next slide. So first, what we did when we created this project was identify the problem. And these are sort of the major pressure points, for lack of a better term, that initiated our prevention work in schools. So we looked at CSAM, COVID, sextortion, games, apps, and advances in technology, more specifically AI, and how that has evolved over the years. These aren't separate problems. We all know that these things overlap because we see that children meet people through games and they continue that conversation with that person on Snapchat or through Instagram. And then they're pressured into sending an image and then they experience threats and sextortion and that continued distribution. But the biggest shift that we've seen in the field is that exploitation no longer requires that physical access to children. Access can happen, and what we're seeing is through phones, through tablets, through gaming headsets. We've even seen it through school-issued devices and tablets. And that's really what changed our prevention conversation entirely. So when we think about grooming in person, that takes time, right? An alleged perpetrator has got to build trust with that child's caregiver, that child's family. They also have to have physical access to that child. With internet and connection with Wi-Fi, children can be groomed in as little as minutes. Okay, and that's really what we were seeing in the problem that we wanted to help solve in our community. Next slide. So the volume of child sexual abuse material that we've seen both in our communities but also across the country is that it's already been growing before COVID, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children shows a massive increase over time. And when we think about people in, our generation, my generation, I got a cell phone when I was 16, and it was when I started driving. Kids are now getting cell phones as young as 8, 9, 10 years old. So our world has changed. And so has the field of abuse, and therefore, so does our world of prevention education. My point in putting this kind of slide in here is not just to show that the numbers are big. My point is that the systems and the resources that we have in place, our MDTs, our CACs, were designed for lower volume, more traditional abuse investigations. So all of a sudden, in our cases, we're seeing digital evidence and online offenders and anonymous accounts and activity that's happening across multiple platforms, right? But what we're also seeing is children who are not identifying themselves as victims, okay? The field of abuse has changed, and that's why we believe that our messaging needed to as well. Next slide. And if we could talk about just briefly COVID, as much as we think it is behind us, it is absolutely still impacting the work that we're doing today. It actually accelerated things for us. Back in 2020, when COVID was at its peak, NCMEC had received more than 21.7 million reports of CSAM that was reported to the cyber tip line. And that was a record-breaking year. And the reason that our team felt that this was so dangerous was because there was a combination of two things that we recognized. One was that there was more time that was spent online unsupervised. And two was that there weren't adults physically present in children's lives when they were in online schooling. So kids were isolated. They didn't have their safe person at school. They were doing school and socializing and gaming and coping with all of their stressors online. And at the same time, they didn't have their school resource deputies or their counselors or their nurses to do check-ins with them. When we talk about COVID, we talk about it more so in the context of children having more screen time, but we also have to think about it as children having less access to casual conversations with adults. So there was no checking in on the sports field, or, if a guidance counselor happens to see a child that's not acting like the normal selves, they don't have that opportunity to just pull them aside because we were looking at Zoom schooling, right? So with that, law enforcement and our CPS teams had to adapt pretty quickly. So we were being asked to respond to online exploitation and apps and screenshots and usernames and all of this digital world. And we hadn't even gotten the specialized training that we needed yet. And I know just firsthand, prior to being a director during the pandemic in 2020, I was conducting forensic interviews full time. And I was asked to present certain things in evidence as evidence in these interviews. And I hadn't even been trained to do it because the research and the training just hasn't been able to keep up with the problem that we're seeing. Next slide. So when we think about sextortion, I mean, the dynamics of that are pretty simple, right? An offender gains access to a child, they build trust, they create pressure, they obtain an image of that child. And then they use fear and they use shame to control and manipulate that child into giving that perpetrator what they want, whether it's money or additional CSAM. The internet, what we found, is a breeding ground because it gives offenders this anonymity. It gives them this reach, and they can do this in such a expeditious manner, and they can do it with financial incentive. So we're not talking about just Cash App or Venmo. We're talking about the in-game the gaming credits, the Robux, okay? People don't have to be in our county or our little community or even in our state or our country to target and harm children that are living here in the state of Maryland, okay? Another thing I want to mention on this slide is that sextortion, it works because kids are scared of getting in trouble, right? They're afraid that their parents are going to get mad if they tell them that something happened to them online. They're afraid that their school is going to find out. They're going to find, or their friends might find the image. There's a guilt, there's a shame, and there's a lot of barrier to reporting sextortion because of this. Next slide. So this is where our program and our student internship idea really started to make sense for what we wanted to accomplish. Adults, we can learn the apps, right? But young people, they live in these apps. They understand how these conversations start. They understand the language, the emojis. They know what feels normal, what seems suspicious, what apps are popular today or this month, and the language that kids and teens actually use. So parents are thinking that, just because their child is home, they're physically safe, they're being supervised. But that's not necessarily the case because the access point is what we're worried about. And that's what's in the child's hands or in their gaming consoles. Okay. And that's why prevention can't be what it used to be. It can't be don't talk to strangers online, or it can't be talking to strangers anymore because now online people are strangers, but they don't feel like strangers because they're actively engaging with them in the context of playing a game. Next slide. So AI is another thing that our team has really wanted to bring to light with schools and prevention, because technology, it's moving faster than our policies can keep up with and our training, like I mentioned. And AI adds another complex layer to things and to our investigations because there's the self-generated material, but then there's the AI-generated material. And sometimes we cannot tell what is real and what is fake. That's how good this stuff is. There's image manipulation, there's deep fakes, you can clone voices, there's fake profiles. So that's what's targeting these kids. And this matters a lot because this is why we've had to change our prevention messaging. We can't rely on the same top 10 apps to be mindful of every year because it changes. We have to update that. We have to keep our prevention messaging fluid and keeping up with youth culture. Next slide. So that's when our solution and our problem solving became a partnership with our school. So what we did was we brought together professionals with different skill sets. So Dr. Thomas and her trafficking background, mine with forensic interviewing and interviewing children. We had law enforcement with their investigative skill set. But what we didn't have was current credible youth perspective and voices. We approached our school administration and our criminal justice teacher, and Danielle's going to talk a bit about this in just a moment, but he became a true champion for our project, and that's really what we contribute our success to, because that's really what mattered. Getting the school's buy-in and getting that gave our program legitimacy, it gave it structure, and it gave us, most importantly, the access to the students, because the peer-to-peer model we would not be able to have if it was not for their peers. We pitched the idea to a criminal justice class, a group of seniors, and the peer-to-peer model, we believe, is what was key, because students are more likely to hear the prevention messaging when it comes from people who understand their world. We can talk all day to them as professionals, but it wasn't hitting the same. The interns are not replacing us as professionals, but what they are doing is they're helping us translate our message so that it lands better and more effectively with our target population, and that is students and children. So my section really was kind of the why and the problem and how we birthed this program, and why the timing of it really mattered and how COVID really started to accelerate things for us. So Danielle, I'm going to kick it over to you, and she's going to walk through kind of how our project moved from just our idea to actual implementation and talk about our outcomes and impact. So Danielle?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I don't know if any of you guys either have kids or know a high school senior, but they're really quick to tell you that you are old and don't know a lot of things. So it was also good on that end of really learning from them of what is going on in these spaces. They were really, I think, really one of the things that made them so um, like captivated in this project was that they saw it from their lens too, as they could be somebody who could be providing prevention to their little cousin, their little brother, their little sister. So it really kind of lit a passion in them as well. So that was cool to see. But if you know a high school senior, you can know how busy they are. So the internship really was a lot of work on the back end for the scheduling piece, scheduling mock presentations, scheduling to really just bring them in and figure out what this process was going to look like. And we did that through an actual interview process. So we had told them, hey, we're doing this, but you all need to come to us with some things, show us what you can bring to the project, right? Because it was a lot of public speaking. It's a lot of like front facing. And I know Lauren and I did this for 2 years, and I think our second year interns definitely came with some interesting outfits, I think, the first time, because that was also one of them, right? Like, we're not just going to school on a normal, typical day. Like, you are being looked at in a different light. You are a leader in your school and in this county. So really what they did, we brought them, again, like Lauren said, with those mentors, and identified topics. We kind of left it to them for the topics, but helped guide them, right? Of like, this is the umbrella we're going to be under. And for the first year, they had picked grooming, human trafficking 101, or like the business side of human trafficking, really diving into how groomers and how traffickers are making money off of really their friends and their family. And then the other one was also AI, I believe. Since then, all of those projects, all of those presentations have kind of developed every year. It's kind of the interns' choice, really, to bring something to the table and say, like, hey, I'm really interested in this topic. So some of those topics have evolved over the past few years. The other thing that we noticed was a presentation on grooming for a fifth grader is not the same content that you need for presentation on grooming for a 12th grader. So I remember being in the room one time when we were doing a presentation the first year for middle school, and one of our interns had asked, like, hey, what does anybody know what grooming is? And one of the kids had said, like, it's when you give your dog a bath, and like brush out their hair. So we are dealing with a range of knowledge of what is grooming. So really throwing these student interns into a situation of how do you, as a public speaker, how do you figure this out? How can you let go with the flow with this range of knowledge and trying to get everybody kind of on that baseline level, right? So that first presentation, we put a lot of work into that first presentation. We had to get those interns approved by the board. So they presented to the board and got approved, and we could go out and again, a lot of that back end stuff of scheduling, figuring out what schools wanted, what types of presentations they wanted, the length of presentation that they wanted. But that first presentation was launched actually January, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, to Pocomoke High School, and we presented to their 9th grade class. Next slide. So that first year's internship, we had actually presented to over, I think just around 850, 860 people in total. We had presented at 6 different schools and had 6 different presentations. 48 different presentations. And like I said, some of those schools were like, hey, we would love to have you come here, but we only have this amount of time. And some schools would say, yeah, come on in. We'll give you a whole day, 8 blocks. We'll get you lunch. So sometimes we were posted up all day. Sometimes it was for a short period of time. But we really left it up to the schools to try to fit in what works best for them. Next slide. Oh, and at the bottom there, and if you want to go back, that would be, thank you. It was really interesting to see, especially working with in partnership with the Child Advocacy Center. After we would go into these schools and they would listen to the presentations from our interns there. And one of the things that we were really clear on doing was identifying safe people, whether that was a safe person in the room from the school social worker, school counselor. We would also bring in trauma therapists as well to be there. And really just encouraging them, like, hey, if anything happens, or like if you feel triggered in some type of way, we would have students who would have to leave sometimes from the presentations because they would be triggered. But we identified an increase of reporting within 2 weeks of us coming in and doing those presentations. Sometimes it was just students who willingly walked to their guidance counselor's office and said, hey, I've been messaging this person online. They're definitely older than 18. They're asking for things. I don't know how to stop. Can you help me? So that was really cool to see. Now, next slide. Cool. Okay. So qualitative results. That first year, one of the cool things I think that was, and again, Lauren had laid this out very, very beautifully. Our partnership with the criminal justice intern, or really the teacher of the criminal justice class within the Worcester County Tech High School, was really key. And he was able to allow those first year interns to use this project to to be their capstone project, right? So those first year interns actually went to Skills USA and they placed 6th in the nation. So that was a really cool experience for them and a really cool experience for us. At that point, we kind of knew like, hey, maybe we're onto something here. It definitely also assisted in strengthening community partnerships, not just from a pure basis of, hey, now we're in all the schools all the time, but also from those students. Those students were a really great way to market, if that's what you want to call it. During our second year internship, we actually had one of a football player who ended up he plays football in college now. And that was a very interesting shift because he was able to really give a perspective of like the gaming side of exploitation and grooming. And so it wasn't just a group of women up there, a group of girls up there. And it was able to be more relatable to all of the students that we went and saw. So that was really important, I think, for the second year. Next slide.
So I hope that the kids listening today can really take away that this can happen to anybody and it's not their fault.
Grooming happens everywhere on their social media sites that they go on, like Fortnite, Snapchat, Roblox, Instagram, TikTok. It's It's everywhere.
How those social media apps allow people to get on the internet and talk to kids through any sort of communication.
What's happening to them isn't exactly normal or legal.
Oh, human trafficking is a job just like any other.
There's so much misinformation spread about it typically.
So my name is Lily Jones.
My name is Delia Holland.
My name is Kylie Powell.
Tanner Ellis.
Elena Spagnola.
Delaney McDaniel. So my presentation specifically is about financial sextortion.
So what I'm presenting is on grooming.
And AI and deepfakes and how that's used to target kids and expose them online.
How predators start the grooming process, what sites they go on, how they find their victims.
What we're presenting is about human trafficking 101.
What happens, how it happens, and who could potentially be a trafficker or be a victim.
And so it's just kind of breaking down what exactly human trafficking is, that it's not one particular category or idea of it. There's all sorts of different types that I feel like people don't realize.
I will be presenting the business of human trafficking. These people are running their job behind different types of companies. They can be out in the open or they can be hidden behind walls.
My topic is grooming. It is when someone manipulates someone else into doing something they want in order to fill that someone's need, such as needing money, shelter, food, and just manipulating them into doing anything they want them to do.
I hope to reach out to elementary schools and parents, adults, even elderly people, because everyone is getting on the internet now.
I hope that in the future, if they were groomed and they didn't realize they were being groomed, I hope that they can realize it and they can find a way to cope with it, and then they can inform their kids about it.
Well, I hope that people realize this is a growing problem and that this is just getting bigger as like the technology, AI, and the internet develops, and that the only way we can really make a difference is speaking about it and using our voice to educate and share stories about victims and what happens and just exactly how we can speak out and prevent that from happening to more people.
Sweet. So those are our first year interns. So that's why some of those numbers and things and stats may have looked a little bit old, because they totally are. But the Board of Education actually paid for us to get that video done. So that's why it's so great quality. We really love it. So, and I feel like we don't even have to go over the barriers and challenges. We can go through questions with that later on. So I will go ahead and wrap up. I know the only other thing that I would want to say is the continued success of the program. Our first year, again, we were able to present to over 860 students. Second year, we presented to over 1,500. And Lauren can speak more on the third year, since I am no longer actively a part of the internship, although it is still continuing and going to be in its fourth year in the fall.
Yep, our time is up. So let's kick it to, I believe, Heather. Is she behind us? Alexandra, there she is.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually going to introduce my colleague, Jenn Metcalf. She's going to take the first half of our presentation and then go over more of the overview of how we launched our youth program and the buildup that we did to build relationships in the community. And then I'll take over and talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of what the program implementation has looked like.
Thank you, Alexandra. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. Good. Okay. Yes, my name is Jenn Metcalf. I'm the Community Engagement and Prevention Director at Hochhaus. And we're here today to talk about Project Hearts, which is a piece of our prevention work. If you want to go on to the next slide. For those of you not familiar, Hochhaus is an organization in Frederick County that serves survivors of sexual assault, human trafficking, child abuse, and intimate partner violence. We are an organization that provides comprehensive services across multiple departments. So we do have a lot of moving pieces. But today we're going to talk about specifically our youth prevention work and how we got to be in Frederick County Public Schools at the level that we are. So as you can see here, we launched Project Hearts in 2024. And the mission of Project Hearts is to strengthen and uplift the youth of Frederick County through programming and networks that promote healthy relationships and sexuality. So I'm going to kind of I want to talk to you about what we had to do to lay the foundation to get where we are today. So if you want to go on to the next slide. A lot of you might be familiar with the blueprint, which really is kind of the umbrella that was a thing that was passed years ago to really try and move the mental health pieces of our public education forward in a way that better supports students. And so the work we're doing in the public schools aligns with that blueprint under these 4 pillars. And that is wraparound services. Every student on FCPS in Frederick County Public Schools and every member of their family is eligible for the services that Hartley House offers, regardless of whether our team is in their school or not. And then we also partner with the community schools in Frederick County. We do case management and community support in those schools. And we're also part of the Maryland Consortium. So that's you might hear the acronym CHRC. That's the group that oversees these grants that are targeted to the support work in the public schools across the state to, again, undergird like mental health support, suicide prevention, and violence prevention and harm to students. And so that's where we fit in. But before we got there in 2024, we have been working in Frederick County Public Schools for over a decade. And it looked like kind of what you would expect. It was a lot of one-off presentations. We would be asked to, can you come to a presentation during lunchtime for all of our seniors on healthy relationships during February. And so that's kind of how we started. And we would partner with specific schools at different times to do more long-term, workshops and things of that nature. But it was all very one-off and definitely fit into that individual level change prevention work that we know about, the education, the awareness. And so it wasn't for nothing, but it definitely wasn't moving the needle on prevention in the way that we wanted to be able to do that. In 2018, 2019, we received funding to be able to do sexual assault prevention. And as part of that, I invited a person from Frederick County Public Schools. He's part of their curriculum team that develops curriculum for health and family life for Frederick County Public Schools. I invited him to be part of our planning team and advisory team for that sexual assault prevention work. And what that did was gave Frederick County Public Schools a seat at our table and saw that they were our trusted partner. And so that opened so many doors for us. And so through that, we were able to get a permanent seat on the Family Life Advisory Council, which is the group, it's a Board of Ed group that allows us to speak into the curriculum and the health ed classes and the supplemental materials that teachers are using in health ed classes. So they gave Hartley House a voice on that committee. That grew, when we became the recipient or the house for the regional navigator program, we created a new MOU with Frederick County Public Schools to allow our regional trafficking navigator to go in and meet with students, which again, and then allowed us to offer an expansion on the case management services for students, regardless of if it was a trafficking situation or not. And so that's been, again, phenomenal. So now, as you can see, we're just building over time the trust and the relationship. So when we received this grant from the CHRC in 2024, we were able to expand that MOU to then be offering these prevention workshop services to students in middle school through high school. And so that's just been fantastic. So if we can go on to the next slide. So that's really the foundation of it. And so when we were trying to figure out, okay, so we have this money, we want to do this work in Frederick County Public Schools so we can really do some meaningful prevention work that's beyond just a one-day presentation for students. How can we really engage that population? How can we build relationships and bring in evidence-based, trauma-informed, data-driven programming? And so I thought really long and hard about what the team needed to look like, because I knew I couldn't just make this work with like a coordinator or two. And so I asked for a proper like program manager for this and two coordinators, and we were able to get the money for that allowed me to bring in Alexandra and her team. And I cannot like say enough how important it is to have the right people at the table, because Alexandra was able to come in, look at the plan, and with her team really execute it in a meaningful way. And we make sure that our work is in alignment with both the state level objectives for health and family life curriculum, and then we tie it into the Frederick County specific objectives, which allows us to have that Board of Ed approval and allow us to make sure that our work is both meaningful but also in alignment with what needs to be taught in Frederick County Public Schools. So we're going into our third year with this money. We're growing the team, and I'll stop talking about it now and turn it over to Alexandra. But it's been over a decade of work that brought us to where we are, and where we are is very exciting.
Thank you, Jenn. And as Jenn covered a little bit earlier, we do try to offer this comprehensive model where we're reaching the students in the classroom, first of all, through school presentations. We're engaging them with the content material to the point where we have some rapport with them and they want to get more involved. So they might ask to become a youth volunteer or an organizer. They might connect us to their parents for parent education, and we build relationships with their teachers. From there, students are funneled. Students who need further services can be funneled into those services within Hartley House, whether that looks like case management or counseling, to do that deeper work if they are a survivor or someone who's more at risk. We can go to the next slide. I want to speak a little bit about data collection. I know it's a boring topic, but actually this has been a key to our success. Of course, for our grant funding, we're required to collect data. But I want to share a little bit about the way we've done that so that maybe it will help you as well if you're implementing something like this. So first of all, what we had to do was develop student surveys to give after each of our presentations. This was definitely a trial and error process in order to write the right prompts that would get us the data that was meaningful enough to be able to interpret results. So that did take us about a good year of trial and error before we got to a solid survey that was helpful to us. We also collaborated a lot internally with our IT department to create the systems to record that data and be able to pull reports that helped us. With those reports, then we could analyze the feedback that we were getting from students and teachers and really use that in real time on a quarterly basis to see how we were doing, whether we were reaching the students effectively or not, and what elements of the program we might need to change and improve. As a tip, we encourage you guys, if you're thinking about starting a school prevention program, to start collecting the data that you have right now, even if your efforts are small, because this is going to help you build a story for the future when you do want to go after that grant. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So here's a little bit more about how we have striven to communicate and collaborate with our school partners. Jenn gave you the lead up of how we built relationships to enable a program like this to take root within our public school system. But this is about ongoing communication and collaboration. So we work very closely with the supervisor of health and physical education in our public school system. This has been the door through which we can reach all of the schools within the Frederick County public system that we would like to be in, that we have the staff and the resources to be able to be in. So every year we meet with this supervisor, we let them know what our results have been, we share the data that we've collected, and we give our proposals for the upcoming year about where we would like to expand. Then that's created a great dynamic where they kind of have rolled out the red carpet to us by bridging an introduction for us with those school leaders and their health department. Then we go ahead and we meet with the health teachers before we start implementing classes, usually in August, let them know how our content aligns with the health curriculum so that they can see, oh, well, now I don't have to teach all of these points. I can just hand it over to the folks at Hochhaus. And that actually gives me a little bit of breathing room in the way that I can plan my classes for the term. So it's really about building that idea of that we're partners with them. We're not coming in there to do something better, but actually to kind of help them with the Maryland curriculum standards that they already have to teach. Scheduling, very practical. It's a constant back and forth of communicating and coordinating. I would just advise having a lot of flexibility around that and working with the schools. What we've been able to do is develop a 3-day program. So we're in each classroom for 3 consecutive days. And that gives us enough depth to build rapport with the students and for them to really come to know us as a recognizable presence. Investing heavily in teacher relationships has been another real key for success with us. This can look like offering workshops on teacher in-service days, building out materials that they can actually implement in their classrooms if they're at a school where we're not able to reach yet, building rapport if we are coming into their classroom, showing them a lot of respect, asking for input and feedback in the moment after each class, and just having an attitude that we're partners with them. We also send out an end-of-year teacher satisfaction survey, get some good feedback through that. Go to the next slide. I want to share some of the principles that have inspired our work with youth. This gives you the philosophy, the flavor of what we're trying to do when we come into a classroom. So I don't think anything on this slide is going to surprise any of you. All right, being trauma informed, taking a harm prevention and reduction approach, respecting youth choice and autonomy, empowering youth with knowledge, and promoting healthy relationships. Those are the core values that we're trying to infuse every classroom presentation with. Some of what that can look like in practice is respecting that each student is at a different place. Some of them are going to be falling asleep. Some of them are going to be a little bit disruptive or defensive when they hear us talking about these types of things. Taking nothing personally, but meeting the youth where they're at, understanding that they have a story that they're coming with, and that what we're proposing to them is something that they have to wrap their own minds around and their own hearts around and use in whatever way makes sense to them. So inviting a lot and encouraging a lot of dialogue, and especially with the high school students, that no answer is ever wrong, even if it is off the wall, but finding a way to connect with them and build rapport so that they actually become receptive to maybe looking at things a little bit differently. The focus is on bringing them into deeper reflection so that they can be empowered to use whatever they get from these presentations in their own life. And we try to keep it really relevant to them by staying up to date on, what youth are looking at today, what they're interested in, modern cultural examples, modern ideas from music and celebrities and whatever is kind of trending in their world right now. We can move to the next slide. So these are some of the topics that the program does cover in middle school. And both in middle school and high school, we're looking at signs of healthy and unhealthy relationships. Of course, in high school, that gets more into the area of dating. In middle school, we're building those building blocks of social and emotional learning and skills. So emotional self-regulation, boundary setting, consent, online safety, all within the context of friendship. Then in high school, we can start to really bring in the sexual violence prevention piece. We start with the individual, building up their self-image, their self-respect, what's going to make them want to set boundaries. communication and assertiveness skills that they can bring into their relationships, all relationships, but then especially, of course, their dating relationships. Understanding what consent is and some of the things that might hold them back from wanting to set a boundary. Just those ordinary feelings, right? Where they can even kind of assert a little bit of internal manipulation or feelings of obligation of what I should do or need to do for my partner because of societal norms. Talking about the realities of teen dating violence and what abusive relationships can look like, how cultural attitudes contribute to that, and then how they can be an advocate and an upstander in their own social situations and groups. Here, I want to highlight that we work a lot with survivors of power-based violence who have come to Hartley House and gone through a course that prepares them to be ready to share their stories within the community. And they're very passionate about doing this with youth. So we have partnered with them to bring a survivor speaker into each of our high school presentations. This has been the highlight for our high school students. We can move to the next slide. Just a little overview of some of our results so far. As you can see, we started small and we're trying to build in a scalable way. So in our first year, we reached 3 middle schools and 2 high schools. We tried to strategically choose these. We were able to reach 2,800 students through that. You can see we got some pretty good rates from our survey outcomes. And then the following year, we scaled up. So we were at 5 middle schools and 3 high schools. And this coming year, we're going to scale up again, just trying to do that in a sustainable way based on the staff that we have and the resources that the grant has allowed us to hire for. We can go to the next slide. We're also trying, besides our work in the classrooms, to build out some youth leadership programs, avenues for young people who want to get further involved. So on the first kind of column here, these are some of the different media projects that our students have gotten involved in. And this has really been fostering their initiatives, say, what would you like to do using their talents? So they created a video for us, and they're about to create another one. We also have teens that have come forward and said, I want to learn how to facilitate these types of workshops for younger people. And so we've given them training in public speaking and facilitation skills, and they create the slides and the presentations and then deliver them. And then finally, we've been able to implement something called the MOST Club, with using materials from another community partner called MCSR, who are out of the Washington, D.C. area. This is a club for healthy masculinity, and it can be implemented on the high school and the middle school level. So we launched our first kind of pilot club at a high school this past spring. So this is the overview of everything that we've done so far. We're in our second year, but we're pretty proud of the progress that we've made and looking forward to further growth. And it's been a pleasure to share that with you all.
Okay, thank you so much to all our panelists for your wonderful presentations and just sharing your expertise and discussing the much needed support you provide in the world of prevention. So we'll now move on to our discussion Q&A part of our session and just ask panelists more about their work. So our first question for our panelists is, how has your organization built trust with school leaders and parents to reach youth?
I'll start. So it's a few things. It's definitely an ongoing process, but we've done a lot over the last 5 years in particular around increasing our effort to developing like long-term partnerships with school leaders by collaborating with on those preventive initiatives, something like the school response toolkit versus establishing like one-time educational programming. We consistently show up in providing those workshops through a trauma-informed lens, through that age-appropriate education, and really trying to adapt and tailor to the developmental needs of each like age population. We do a lot of completing what we refer to as like outreach efforts. So doing a lot of tabling and networking to engage parents and families in addition to students. And then I think we've all kind of highlighted in various ways empowering young people to like become a part of that piece as well. So yeah, putting a lot of time into communication, collaboration with schools, really bringing people in as partners, framing ourselves as experts, but again, bringing people in partnership, knowing that we are actively doing this, together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angeles. Do any of our other panelists want to chime in and kind of speak about how your organization has built trust with school communities?
I can.
I'll chime in. I for the second year, I know that. So our internship, the first year, it just felt like we're going in and we're saying like, hey, yeah, beware of these things. And then like, have a great life. See you later. Maybe next year. And there was no real follow up or follow through on our end. So what we ended up doing is actually going back to them. We were certified in, it was a Girls One Circle, I think is what it was, and Love 146 as well. So we went back to the schools and said like, hey, we're available for after school, like anything you need after school. They were like, okay, how much how much money? We're like, no, we're a community partner. We're just here to help out. And they were all about it. So we ended up doing 2 middle schools. I did those myself, and I can tell you that that was a very interesting time because they definitely sent our way the like high risk, try a group of high risk middle schoolers after school is as Alex knows, like that it can be a little rowdy sometimes, but being able to prove and really build that rapport with the schools of like, hey, we're not just here for like our own motives, but we're here to fulfill needs because we are partners.
Yeah, and just kind of to echo that, I think like just being present in the community, like and not just my team, but our community-based services team works really closely with those community schools. And so the Project Hearts team isn't in the elementary schools, but we have other staff who are. And so being in those spaces is really important to kind of start to get to know the families and talk about the work, but also working with those other organizations, those youth-based organizations that are adjacent to the school system is also really important. So the kids see us at school and then they're going to Boys and Girls Club and we're there too. And they're really excited to see the team. And they're like, okay, so you actually do care about me because you're here, just kind of just being consistent and being present in the community, showing up to like the meetings and following up on even just those little things, following up with the teachers so they know like we actually are listening to them and, we're taking their feedback. I think that's a big thing too. We even one day I think adjusted a presentation from day 1 to day 2 based on teacher feedback, and I think that means a lot. So then the teachers would know, okay, you aren't just like, it's not just plug and play, you actually do care about the students in my classroom and responding to our feedback and our needs. So I think those pieces have been really important.
Great, thank you so much. We do have a question submitted. So one of our participants wants to know, do you share the intern train the trainer project with other centers? Was this directed at Angeles or for one of our other, Danielle? I just want to clarify. So someone had asked, do you share the intern train the trainer project with other centers?
Yeah, I can also let Lauren speak to this as well. We do. We have. I think Lauren and I have presented this probably 3 or 4 times. So we definitely are we want the word to get out there. We have also worked very closely together on developing like a blueprint essentially. So like from top to bottom, everything that we did is in a document, and I can make sure that that's sent out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. Moving on to our next question. So we know that with kind kind of a lot of the great things that come from building trust and working towards prevention, there are also some challenges. Can you share some of the challenges you face in your professional work with schools, and how have you been able to address these challenges?
I can answer that just from Danielle and I. One of the things that we had at first was a lot of reluctance from parents that were given the information kind of third hand from the administrators. So we would be going into the schools, talking with administration, and then administration would be saying, hey, here's the curriculum we're going to be rolling out. And parents were calling and asking questions and wanting to speak with us just to say, hey, this is new information to my kid, or who is going to be presenting, and just wanting to know more. So what we did create was an opt-out form. And what we found, I think in the last couple of years that we've been doing this, we've maybe had 4 students out of the hundreds that we've done that their parents have opted out. So it is a good conversation starter to kind of have, because we want those questions and we want to make sure that the message that we're presenting to students is consistent and relevant and credible and accurate information. So I think it was good that parents were asking those questions, but a way for us to address it was say, hey, we're not here to push our propaganda down your child, but what we do want you to know is recognize the importance of this. But if you're not okay with it, here is a form that we created from the CAC that you can opt out for this purpose.
Just to tag on to that, we also presented to parents as well. We did community events. So if they had some questions and they wanted to see it first, that was also an option.
I think one of the challenges that we faced was something I alluded to earlier, which was building relationships with the classroom teachers. Since our program is so heavily classroom based, and often when you're working in a school, it can feel a bit like a fortress at times, where you are the outsider. So really being, I think our response to that when we met sort of some teacher reluctance or hesitation was just really being extremely communicative about our program, what it looked like, what topics we would be covering, sharing our slides ahead of time with the teachers, offering to go into the classroom and meet with them at the beginning of the year. And then again, kind of highlighting what Jenn was saying about really seeking feedback and showing that we're implementing that feedback in very concrete ways. And with that, it was really like remarkable to see kind of any defenses or walls coming down. Also, I think what helped a lot was just when they saw how carefully and how deliberately we tried to interact with the students in very positive ways. You know, when they saw that we were really there to be invested and not just to kind of come in, do our thing and jet out, but really to be invested in building the relationships with the students, and to be a very caring and engaged presence with them, that made a huge difference in building their trust.
If I can just tack on to that too, one, you can't overstate the importance of candy. We write candy into the budget for the kids, but also bringing in stuff that's relevant to the kids. So like their, clips, movie clips, things like that. We also, I don't know I think Alexandra might have shared this, but we also use the 10 healthy signs from One Love as kind of the core piece. And that was, again, an easy lift because One Love materials had already been approved for use in all Frederick County Public Schools by the Board of Ed. So kind of finding that low-hanging fruit, stuff that's already approved, so that, and really making sure that you are strategically aligning with those school-wide objectives is really important, because then if questions do come up, you're able to say, this is what we're teaching, nothing's secret, nothing's, and it's all in alignment with what's already been run through the school board. And so that made that lift a lot easier.
One thing I would like to just add to this conversation, I know in stepping into this work right out of college. One of the things as I was engaging with our curriculum that still stands true at times is that sometimes like our scenario work, our activities and things like that, they aren't reflective of the young people that we're speaking to. And I mean that in an identity sense, right? That some of the scenarios are not relatable. They don't sound like how a student talks. It doesn't sound or reflective of some of the things that they're engaging with on a daily basis. In my bio, we spoke about me having this kind of insight and perspective into intersectionality. So we've really done a lot of undoing to make sure that the content feels relevant to really diverse audiences. And we've also been really reflective of that in the folks that we hire. Like I know one of our challenges is that oftentimes if they're like male educators looking for black identifying males to present to their young black boys, right? So like being able to, even in the hiring process, trying to make sure that the team is diverse and that we are open if someone says, I prefer this type of educator, and being able to produce that and try to work with people on that. Someone mentioned Candy with the bystander intervention program that I highlighted in particular. We built into our grants to be able to pay those student leaders, right, for every session that they attended, for all the sessions that they then presented to their peers. So also like even down to like when we are doing grants and how are we communicating what those program needs to avoid some of those challenges are super important.
Great, thank you so much. And I'll just answer some of the questions we have. So one of our first questions in the Q&A chat was directed towards Alexandra, and they wanted to know would Harley House be willing to share their templates surrounding their student survey? And I just wanted Alexandra to have a chance to answer that.
Yes. I think I can say I'll check with my boss, but I think we can share the templates for that. And one thing that we've learned was the best way to do a survey is a before and after format, but you don't really have contact with the students before and after. So we found kind of a workaround with that where we would, at the end of the presentation, ask them to reflect on what they knew before and how that changed through the course of the presentation. So that's kind of one big tip that we learned through this process.
Great. And we also have another question from an audience member. One of the biggest barriers our prevention educators are facing right now is getting schools to agree to programming. What are some of your tips or best practices for selling programming to increase our reach and getting more schools involved?
I can quickly just say, for us, it's that relationship higher up in the school system. Because when we have that connection with the team who's over all the health teachers. And so they basically sent an email at the beginning of the year that like, these people are going to be coming to your classroom to do this work. You tell them what days they can come. And having that buy-in at the higher level opened those doors. So it almost wasn't even an option for the teachers. And that I think was a crucial piece for us. And I know that's not doable for everyone, and that can take some time to build to that. But getting that buy-in at the higher level does give you, I think, more standing to open those doors. But I think just more communication with the teachers, telling them how you're going to make it easier for them to do their job, figuring out they have to teach this thing, you can come do that for them, kind of framing it like you're really helping them.
So we are running, we're almost at time. So I'm going to have Andrews answer our last question. Could you please share a bit more about the restorative aspects of Turnaround's program?
I didn't get into turnaround as a whole, but we don't just do prevention education. It is a holistic approach, providing, therapy, case management, legal assistance. We run a youth-based program around youth abusers for intervention. So there are a number of things. I just think if I summed up our preventive efforts is really just taking our time to understand schools' unique like cultural priorities and strengths and challenges. Our approach is to approach school partners and focus on the expertise and existing efforts that they're already doing. So many people, multiple people have mentioned being flexible, be accommodating in those spaces, and really investing in relationships, not just the presentations, following up after trainings, providing additional resources, offering consultations, remaining available to trusted partners when new challenges arrive. And additionally, empowering young people. We've seen that on display through all of our panelists today. And someone mentioned at the end data, presenting data, going back to the previous question, to sell people on and adapting your work based off of that evaluation and data. Remembering every conversation, every partner meeting. Remember that every resource share, every interaction counts. So just be patient and consistent.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. This has been incredible. We could talk for hours about the incredible programs you've developed. So we're just so grateful for sharing. Thank you to our audience for being here. As we close out, if our panelists would like to share their contact info in the chat, I'd invite you to do that. We've also shared an evaluation link, as well as some other upcoming ways to keep connected on prevention work. We're hosting a prevention roundtable with our partners in DC and Virginia on July 29th. We invite you to join us. And then our second session coming soon will be on child sexual abuse prevention on August 12th. So much more to come. Thank you again so much to our panelists. Thank you to our interpreters, and we hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.